Hi, my name is Heather, and today I'm going to talk to you about a really long talk title. I didn't actually practice saying this before I submitted the talk. So I'm going to tell you about my experience of mentoring someone while I was completely new to testing myself. I'd only been in testing a year and a half. So we're going to look at the things I did right, the things I did really wrong to steer clear of, and kind of all the stuff in between, and some advice should you find yourself in a similar situation. So a bit about me. I started as a mathematician. I did a degree in maths and chemistry where I did Java, C programming and MATLAB, a bit random for maths. And I got a job in a pharmaceutical company working as a mathematical planner, which is, the job was as obscure as the job title was. And I became a software developer in MATLAB. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with MATLAB, but it's not a particularly nice language to program in. But I started to piss all the developers off. All the other developers, whenever they would commit stuff and it would break things, I'd be like, dude, you just broke this. Yeah, but like I put in this new feature. Good for you, but you broke all this other shit. So we had a contractor in at the time, and he said, you really need a tester, and I think she's perfect for the job. And they're all going, Jesus. So then I found the software testing community. And they really helped me on my journey to get started in software testing because I was on my own. I had nobody to mentor me when I was getting started. And then I found Ministry of Testing, who I now work for as a community manager and tester in my spare time. So in the beginning, my dog features a lot. She's my co-worker. Sorry. So in the beginning, I had been kind of thrown into this testing role. And it was going grand because MATLAB, I was familiar with it. But then our customers started coming back and saying, this product's really slow. So our contractors had said, you've moved to the web. And all of the developers then had to learn JavaScript, which is a pretty big fucking jump from MATLAB. And I was still trying to learn testing, so I couldn't, like in the beginning, they were able to pick up stuff for me to help me out. But at this stage, they were all learning too. So I couldn't really put that on them to kind of help me out. And so we had 4 devs. We had 3 part-time contracted devs and 1 full-time dev. Sorry, 3 full-time and 1 part-time. Plus this legacy product with a dev on that. And I was testing all of the stuff. And in the middle of it, the board thought, fuck it, she's not doing enough. Let's contract her out to someone else to do testing 2 days a week. Cheers, thank you. Yep. So my workload was it was growing at an insane rate. And I really wanted to hire someone to help me because I was like, I'm on my own. I am sinking. I'm feeling pretty pissed off, like the dog there. So some of you might have heard that from small acorns grow mighty oaks. But this is a story about how something beautiful grew from something really, really rotten. So this was an awful situation. The company was shit. The team were fantastic, but the company was just rotten to the core. So I finally convinced management that, I am really stressed. I'm pulling ridiculous days, and I need help. But the convincing part was that the devs were helping me test, and shit, now they're not developing, and then we're not getting the product out fast enough. So we definitely need to hire testers. So we went through stacks of CVs, lots and lots and lots of CVs. And I found 2 people that I really liked. I was like, yeah, let's hire these. And the board went, actually, there's no budget for that anymore. I was like, oh, fuckers. And then we hired another developer, and we still had me contracted. And now we had this extra developer and these contractors and this legacy product. And I was going like, seriously. So the developers were still helping me. And then the board were like, okay, yeah, go interview again. And again, here, I want to hire this person. Nah, there's no budget. I was like, I gave up. At this stage, I was like, there's nothing that's going to help. They're not going to hire someone, so I just need to plow on as is. And then one day, it was a Thursday, I think, I was told, oh yeah, there's someone starting on Monday, and they're going to help you out with testing. I was like, I didn't interview this person. Who interviewed them. Nobody on the team had. Oh, fantastic, cheers. What's their background? Oh, I don't know, she'll find out on Monday. CV? Oh, management has that. Could they forward it? That would be really helpful. It turned out this guy had no background in tech at all. His PhD was in pharmaceuticals, which is great, coming to work for a pharmaceutical company. But if you're supposed to be helping me with testing, like what? So it felt a bit like this koala. It's like, you did what? You hired someone without any of the dev or test team input? It's a bit pixelated, sorry. And then we entered the wilderness, because the whole team was like, oh, what's the fucking point of hiring this guy? So my manager had said, once I kind of went off to the bathroom and exploded and came back, I was like, oh, hi, so what are we going to do? He says, look, I wanted you to have help, but the board are never going to approve that. And we have yet another contract coming in. And this guy's background is going to really help with that contract. So I've convinced them to hire him for 3 months. But he's not going to be on that full time. He's going to have a lot of spare time. So I was thinking, with a bit of mentoring, he could help out with software testing. I was like, mentoring? Pardon? So the Oxford Dictionary says a mentor is an experienced person in a company or educational institution who trains and counsels new employees or students. And I was like, fuck it, I'm not experienced. Like, I'm only in this a year and a half. And I spent 6 months of that 18 months just trying to figure out what testing actually was. No, I'm not experienced. So the Cambridge Dictionary says it's a person who gives a younger or less experienced person help and advice over a period of time. It's like, aha, now we're getting somewhere. So all these light bulbs started to go off. And I was like, fuck it, I don't have to be the experienced person. I just have to be more experienced than this guy. I needed to know where I could go to ask for help. So I had this testing community that I could go to ask for help. I had been doing that for ages. And I'd written an article. It was 30 things every new software tester should learn. So I was like, well, I used that on my journey. So maybe I could use that as a basis for his journey. So I took to Testers Chat, which is a Slack channel. There's like about over 6,000 testers on it. And I'd spent a lot of time on there asking for help. So I knew I could trust these people. I knew that when I asked for help, they were going to give me pretty sound advice. And the first piece of advice I got was, don't introduce them to testing on the first day, or the second day, or the third day. There's going to be so much HR paperwork, and because it was pharmaceuticals, there was going to be an awful lot of ridiculous pharmaceutical paperwork shit that they had to go through. So instead, let them play with the application each evening. Once they're like, just their brain is melted from all this paperwork, from like 3 to 5, just go, here's the application, here's the user manual, play with it, and we'll talk once you're finished all this paperwork. So, day 1, I entered battle. There was a lot of hurdles. So I still had to keep testing at the pace that management expected. I had to train this guy. I had to find out what his background was. And then the explosion happened at the end. When he turned to me, he's like, oh, shit. He said, I've no interest in actually staying here. He says, I'm just looking for funding to finish my PhD. So yeah, 3 months, I'm gone. I was like, you're shitting me. I'm going to put all this effort into training you. And he told me this in confidence, so I couldn't exactly go to management and go, I don't want this fucker because he doesn't want to be here. I was like, I had to be professional. I had to be like, oh, that's lovely. Yes, well, we'll do the best we can in 3 months and we'll train you to the best of my abilities and not hate you. Really try very hard not to hate you. And that was tough going. So I had read a couple of blogs from Katrina Clokey, and I thought, we'll try pairing. So pairing take 1. Fuck it. It didn't really work because he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to learn about testing. He had no interest in it. His background was pharmaceuticals. I was still pissed off with him because he didn't want to be there. So it was like this really forced situation where he'd sit there and go, oh, Perrin, yeah, and he'd pull out his phone and start texting, or he'd be at the keyboard and I'd be going, oh my God, you're doing it wrong. And it was just, it just really didn't work. And the rest of the team could see that I was struggling. And they kind of said, look, do you want us to help for a bit? Like, he can come and pair with us and see what we do and how that fits in to what you do. I was like, yes, thank you, thank you. So we were at Wednesday of his first week at this stage. And one of the devs kind of started talking to him and says, do you know, we haven't done a team lunch yet. You've started and it was tradition with everybody else. And he says, what kind of foods do you like? And he says, oh, I like curry, but the rest of you probably don't. And he says, nah, Weatherspoons do curry Thursday. And Weatherspoons was literally across the road from the office. Let's head over on Thursday. Let's go for a curry. And I was still thinking, fucker, I'm not going to like this guy. So we went for a curry into Weatherspoons, and we had quite an open plan office. And the other team, if they heard you saying something, they would kind of go on back to management and go, Heather said she didn't understand that. Like, yeah, but I sat with someone and they explained it to me, and now I do. You don't have to go back to management every time. So there was this really toxic atmosphere in the office. But when we went for curry, you're in a pub. In Weatherspoons, most of the people around us couldn't even, So it was this safe space for us to just talk and rant and get to know each other. And we had the privacy of the open plan office. We weren't worried about anything we said getting back to management. So after curry, once we had a bit of a rapport built up, we tried pairing take 2. Oh, they're actually the shoes I have on me today. So once we had a rapport built up, and this is something I heard in a podcast recently, a Testers Island Disc podcast with Melissa Eden. She said pairing works better if you have a rapport built up with the person you're pairing with. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, actually, she's dead right. So we started to pair a bit better, and it wasn't fantastic. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, it was still rocky. But about 3 months in, so towards the end of his contract, we were like pairing ninjas. We were flying through testing, and he was showing his value to management. So much so that they gave him another 3-month contract, because fuck it, you don't need to be permanent. And I think that was one of the key things with the pairing, was just getting to know each other. And we would fly through things in half a day that would take each of us a day and a half, 2 days ourselves. I told you she features a lot. One of the things that I implemented from the beginning, so day 1, and it was really painful from the start, was retrospectives. So 5 minutes every single day, not like a sprint retrospective where you spent hours just beating your head against a wall. 5 minutes every day for him to tell me what he'd done that day, what did he want to know about the next day. And we did it at the end of the day, so I had the train home that evening, and the train in the next morning to figure out how I was going to approach the next day with him. And in the beginning, it was like, I still don't get this testing shit. But 3 months down the line, it was, I was running this script in JMeter and I ran into this issue, and I was wondering, could we look at it tomorrow? So because we had that time set aside from the very beginning, as we went on, it just became really natural to just catch up really quickly for like 5 minutes. And it worked really well. And one thing we learned from the retrospectives was our preferred learning styles. So he had a PhD background, so he loved going through stacks of paperwork and trying to find information. I didn't. I've reading difficulties, so I can't process that much text information. So I was doing, at the time, Technical Web Testing 101 by Alan Richardson, which is video-based, which really worked well for me. And then he buggered off with all of the JMeter documentation, which is pretty extensive. And he took the important information out of that. And then he started teaching me JMeter. And I was going, you're only in this like 3 months. How can you do that? I've been looking at this for ages. But because that was his preferred learning style, was the documentation, he was able to then help me with it. And then he also helped me by telling me how I could take pieces of information out of this text. And then I showed him how you can get good information out of videos. So while our preferred learning styles are still for him text and for me videos, we still learned how to learn the way the other person does. And kind of similar to the Currys. So after sprint planning, so our sprint planning was every second Tuesday from 2 o'clock until 4, but to upper management it was from 2 o'clock until 5. Our manager would leave at 4, but he would book the meeting room until 5. And he'd go, I trust that you are discussing everything that we have discussed in this sprint planning meeting, and that, you know, very important work is being done. A lot of the time we were just ranting about the company or just shooting the ship and like, oh, you were on holidays in such a place, how did that go? How are the kids? And to management, who found out later, it seemed like this massive financial time sink. You're spending a half an hour or an hour every fortnight with all of those people in a room and you're not even talking about work. But again, like with the Curry, it gave us that safe space to discuss or to just get to know each other. And then when we would leave, we worked really fluidly as a team. As I said, it was a pretty rotten situation and a lot of the team has left. But if someone came back to us and said, Jill, this team is going to kick off on a new project, we would all be there. The team worked amazingly together. One of the things then that I learned was, because I'd been a lone tester for 1.5 years, I was used to being involved in everything. But when I had this mentee, I had to learn to take a step back. And it was difficult because I didn't trust him. I didn't trust that I had trained him properly. I didn't trust that he could make mistakes and it would be okay. And I didn't like that he was doing the security testing and the performance testing and I wasn't. I didn't see that while I was doing the automation and I had really in-depth product knowledge. So I had to learn to look in and touch base and not take over and not be like, no, you're doing it wrong, and try and do stuff. And after about 5 months then, we were I learned to be a bit more hands-off, but it took a while. And I didn't like that he could train me. So don't resist the role flip. Don't worry about your mentee becoming your mentor. You can learn an awful lot from them, and you'd be pretty surprised, even in the beginning. So yeah, some conclusions. Pairing works better if you have a rapport built up. Really, really does. Our pairing started to fall apart a bit towards the end when we weren't able to go out to lunch anymore, where senior management would try to come to have the curries with us if we were saying, oh, we're going to go for a walk instead. So do try and have that rapport built up, because while you're trying to force the pairing to work, the time spent trying to force it to work will be much better spent going for a walk or having a curry. And don't be afraid to ask other non-testing team members for help. Developers love talking about what they do. They love going, look at me, I'm great. So let them do that. Let them show this person what they do, because it does fit in with what you do. You will have at least one thing in common with your mentee, and it might be really friggin' hard to find. So for us, it started with curry. And then one day in sprint planning, we were kind of talking, what are your plans for the weekend? I says, oh, I'm going over to see my brother. And my mentee said, well, where's your brother? I said, Donegal, you wouldn't know the area, it's a really small town. Oh, whereabouts? It's near the airport. No way, my family has a holiday home there. I'm like, what? So it took us, that was about 3-4 months in. But yeah, it took a while to find that thing in common. Mentoring is natural when you work closely together and get to know each other. And you don't have to be geographically close to each other. It can work through being remote as well. Anyone can be a mentor in the right environment. What is the right environment? It's a tough one to call. It'll vary depending on your team situation. For us, we had a really supportive manager, and I had a pretty good team from the get-go. But we were always fighting the upper management trying to stop us working that well together. And don't resist the role flip. Let your mentee mentor you. It's not going to be the end of the world. and you never know what you might learn. So some resources. During our testing, we used 30 things every new software tester should learn. Technical Web Testing 101 with Alan Richardson. Simon Bennett has some awesome ZAP tutorials on YouTube, and that really helped us to get started with our security testing. And Simon Knight has Performance Testing 101 on the Dojo. And then if you're interested in mentoring yourself, I would suggest checking out the Software Testing Clinic. Their mentor guide is really, really useful if you're interested in mentoring in your own environment, or maybe getting set up with the Software Testing Clinic as a mentor. Any questions?
So did the guy still leave after?
He's actually still there. He got a permanent contract in the end, yes, and did finish his PhD, and is still a tester.
Is he here?
No. He's at a wedding today. Yep.
Have you ever mentored someone when you've got such a good rapport with them that you end up just not being able to focus on what you're doing, going off on tangents all the time?
Yeah, so
In Netflix and stuff.
that will kind of happen us later on in the situation where, yeah, we knew each other so well that we kind of would get distracted. So what we did eventually to kind of combat that was time box our sessions where we were pairing. So it's like, we have an hour, and at the end of the hour, if we haven't achieved that, and the two of us would kind of be like, yeah, we need to stop just shooting the shit now. So yeah, I would recommend time boxing in that situation. It kind of helps you go off on a tangent a bit less. Yeah.
Any tips for mentees that are dicks?
Del, you'll have something in common with your mentee. Not saying that you're a dick or anything like, but yeah.
To what extent do you think it's important to sort of guide the mentees learning versus let them learn what they want to learn and help them do that?
I think in the situation I was in, I guided it a little bit in that you will need this for this product, but I didn't want to be too controlling of that either, because then he would get bored if he couldn't do what he wanted to do. So I said, look, these are the core things you need to learn, and these are things that if you want to learn, you can, not compulsory. So I think, yeah, being structured in some areas, so knowing the core things that you need for your team or the product, or you need them to do, but then giving them a bit of freedom as well to choose what they'd like to do. So for him, he was really big into security. And I was like, right, if that's what you want to do, fire ahead, yeah. We need it, so there's no problem, go for it. Yeah.
Did it change your perception on what's required in order to be a good tester then? You said you were really looking for someone who had experience and they didn't have experience in this.
Yeah, so in the beginning I was like, I wanted someone with experience because I thought, well then they're going to be able to hit the ground running. So while I did spend 3 to 6 months training this guy, in the end, he was, I would say, as good as, if not better than a lot of the people we had interviewed for the role that I wanted to offer to that were looking for 20, 30,000 more. So it definitely changed my perception of what it takes to be a good tester and how quick someone can be skilled up to be a good tester. Yeah.
If you could go back in time and tell yourself one thing at the start, what would it be? Back to before you mentored anyone.
Trust yourself. Because I didn't trust that I was good enough for even while I was mentoring him. And people were like, you can totally do this. You wrote this article. I was going, yeah, and? I didn't believe in myself that I could mentor him. So I relied a lot on asking others for help in the beginning. And that's fine. But believe in yourself, you can do it. If you're a tester, you're here, your team respects you, you're doing a good job. If no one said to you, you're shit, up to this point, you can do it.
You mentioned that you've moved on now. Are you mentoring anyone anymore?
I'm still mentoring him, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've been with the previous company and then Ministry of Testing since. But yeah, I do still mentor him through Slack a fair bit as well, yeah. Thank you very much.